Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into today, and we're going to talk about some Impact Wrestling, and we're going to talk about this massive story that, of course, broke last night in a real stunning turn of developments. Impact Wrestling and WWE working together? Have WWE entered this Forbidden Door era of pro wrestling? Are they starting to work with other promotions? The answer may be yes, and the answer of who they're working with first might be, in a stunning turn of events, Impact Wrestling, but you can see it right there. If you were watching SmackDown last night, or even if you weren't, you were just scrolling through the timeline, you would have seen the big news that Impact Wrestling's Knockouts champion, yes, Impact's Knockouts champion, Mickie James, will be a part of the 2022 WWE Women's Royal Rumble match later on this month, and they're not just advertising it as Mickie James, WWE legend, former women's champion, appearing. No. They're advertising it as Impact's Knockout World Champion, Mickie James, will be entering the Rumble. You can see it right there in the tweet next to me. That's what the tweet said from the official WWE Twitter account. It said Impact's Knockouts World Champion, Mickie James, will be in the Royal Rumble match. Wow, really didn't see that one coming for a variety of reasons. We'll get into them. But in a stunning development, it was announced last night during SmackDown that reigning Knockouts World Champion Mickie James will be one of the entrants in WWE's annual Royal Rumble match in St. Louis on January 29. Now, the shocking news came on last night's edition of SmackDown on Fox and has been confirmed with Impact Wrestling's Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore. Speaking from Dallas, of course the location of this weekend's pay-per-view, D'Amore said, quote, WWE wanted it, Mickie wanted it, and Impact Wrestling's philosophy is always to work with other major promotions to create buzz for the fans. Everything is signed and agreed with WWE and Impact Wrestling. The only question is whether or not Mickie will enter one of WWE's most historic annual matches as the reigning Knockouts World Champion. We'll touch on that. Now, of course, that does refer to Mickie James' massive rematch with Deonna Purrazzo at the Hard to Kill pay-per-view tonight in Dallas. We will be doing a watch-along and a post-show for that, so stay tuned. The pair will collide in a Texas death match with the title on the line, and of course, Hard to Kill is available everywhere. D'Amore did add some further comments, though, kind of touting Impact Wrestling's willingness to work with other promotions and other companies, which, in fairness, they have displayed time over the course of the last 12 months. He said, quote, "There's never been a time like this for wrestling fans. In a 12-month period, Impact Wrestling has worked with NWA, AAA, New Japan, AEW, and now WWE. Impact Wrestling is the nexus of the Forbidden Door era." And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Obviously, AEW was working with a lot of companies, and Tony Khan, I suppose, was one of the first people to really sort of talk about the Forbidden Door. But Impact Wrestling have absolutely smashed it open. Now, I was surprised, like many people, obviously one, because WWE just doesn't work with other companies. They don't. In this Forbidden Door era, they're the kid in the sandbox that's playing with all of their toys and doesn't want to share. So to see them have someone from another company work an event isn't exactly groundbreaking, but them in this era, when pro wrestling doesn't exist outside of WWE, of course, them to say the Impact Knockouts champion, Mickie James, is in the Royal Rumble match, that's pretty significant. That is significant. I think also the shocking element of it is how Mickie James left WWE in April of 2021. Now, her departure in itself wasn't anything grand or big. Mickie James was, like many people, let go by WWE in April 2021 due to budget cuts. Those budget cuts that are still ongoing to this day, and I've seen so many people leave the company over the course of the last 12 months. It was the weeks after and the months after that made this return to WWE even more shocking, I suppose, because in the weeks after her release, it emerged that the former women's champion had her belongings returned to her in a trash bag, a move that it had emerged then cost Mark Carrano his job with WWE, and it had happened with several people over the years that their belongings were returned to him in a trash bag with a little post-it note with their name on it. That led to, I think, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon and other WWE executives apologizing, both publicly and privately, to Mickie James. But that wasn't the only thing that happened between her and WWE. In interviews after her release, she had revealed that several times she had petitioned to WWE to do another all-women's pay-per-view event that she wanted to be involved in, and she pushed really hard for it, and basically WWE just pushed back and said nobody was interested and they weren't going to do it. So when she left the company, she did it just in another company. She did it in the NWA. She created NWA Empower, an all-women's pay-per-view, which she was the executive producer of. Now, during that time period as well, she was very critical of WWE and how they handled their women's division, as well as their treatment of older female performers. So given that as well, seeing Mickie James come back was certainly, an eyebrow raiser, an eye-opener. Now, Mickie James returned to Impact in July. She won the Knockouts Championship once again by defeating Deonna Purrazzo at Bound for Glory. She's held the Knockouts title on 4 occasions. And it was unusual that WWE acknowledged James as the Knockouts champion from Impact Wrestling, because they just don't do that. They just don't. They don't acknowledge other companies because, as I mentioned, pro wrestling doesn't exist outside of WWE in their mind. So I've got quite a few thoughts on it. I've seen some people that are saying, Mickie James, what a sellout, what a sellout. You railed against WWE, you criticised them for their handling of the women's division, and now you're going back. What are you going back for? The payday, all this kind of stuff? I don't necessarily feel like that, if I'm going to be honest with you. I look at it like this. Who really won here? Mickie James won here, okay? First of all, she's coming back, she's getting paid. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, that's all that matters. They fired her a year ago, and now they're begging for her to come back. She won on that front. She left, and she was the executive producer of an all-women's pay-per-view that was very historic. So she won on that front. She's the Knockouts champion. She won on that front. She's probably more relevant than she's been in the last few years, and she deserves to be. She then has WWE actually reference that she is the Knockouts champion. That isn't by coincidence. It's just not. So for WWE to reference another company, which they never do, that's a win on Mickie James. If I'm Mickie James, I'm saying to myself, not only do they want me to come back, they wanted to get rid of me a year ago, but now they're begging for me to come back, and now they've got to reference another company, which I know they hate doing, and it helps out Impact Wrestling. I say fair play to Mickie James. Now, will she be the Knockouts champion by the time the Royal Rumble comes around? I say probably not. But it has kind of changed things, I suppose. I always expected Deonna Purrazzo to win at Hard to Kill tonight. I thought that she would drop the title. I didn't expect her to drop the title in the first place, to be honest, to Mickie James at Bound for Glory. But what she did, I said, well, eventually she'll win it back. And once they set up the match, the Texas Death Match, Hard to Kill, I thought, well, Deonna Purrazzo is obviously going to win the title back. And that might have been the plan. But now that Mickie James is in the Rumble, and now that WWE have actually acknowledged that James is the Knockouts champion, it kind of, I suppose, is in Impact's best interest to keep the belt on her, because having Mickie James come out and carrying the Knockouts Championship with her around her waist, if they'd let her do that, WWE, would be a big deal for Impact Wrestling. It really would. And think about it as well. The pay-per-view is today. Even if Mickie James does drop the title tonight, it's generated just a little nice bit of buzz for the pay-per-view tonight, hasn't it? And maybe that's the case. Maybe Mickie James, that was one of her conditions of coming back. Yes, I'll do the Rumble, but when you announce me as the Knockouts champion, the Impact Knockouts champion, do it on the Friday before Hard to Kill on Saturday, get a bit of buzz going, and it'll help Impact Wrestling out, and maybe they'll do a few more pay-per-view buys for the event. And realistically, that's probably what it's done. It's got people interested in the match tonight. They'll tune in to the pay-per-view because they'll be like, well, I want to see who wins, because I felt like Deonna Purrazzo was going to win, but now maybe she won't. Maybe Mickie James now wins, and maybe Mickie James is going to enter the Women's Royal Rumble as the Knockouts champion. Now, she's obviously not going to win the Royal Rumble. She isn't. But I find it fascinating the idea of the Knockouts champion showing up on WWE television with the Knockouts championship round her waist. That would be interesting. It'd be even more interesting if Mickie James lost tonight, but the Knockouts champion Deonna Purrazzo, who, remember, was part of WWE before and did wrestle on Raw. She was squashed a couple of times, but she was wrestling in WWE. It would be fascinating to see Mickie James lose the title tonight, enter the Women's Royal Rumble, and then you have Deonna Purrazzo enter the Rumble as well, and then maybe eliminate Mickie James, continue their feud there, but on a WWE platform, and bring it back to Impact. That's interesting. Whether or not they would do that, I don't know. To be honest, the whole Women's Royal Rumble is laughable anyway, because they're scrambling. They're desperate to try and fill up spots in that Rumble. They don't even have, and this is how brutal the budget cuts in WWE have been, and how bad the treatment of the women's division in WWE has been over the last 12 months. They don't even have 30 full-time female wrestlers on the main roster. They don't. That's why they've had to announce these legends coming back, whether it's the Bella Twins, Lita, Summer Rae, Kelly. And I know every year they bring legends back. They do it for the men as well, frankly. but they couldn't even name a full 30-woman Royal Rumble if they wanted to, of full-timers there. Speaks volumes. So the critics would look at Mickie James saying, wow, you're coming back, but you're coming back in an even worse situation than when you left in the first place. So that's interesting. But do I see this being this big now working relationship with Impact and WWE? No, I don't. I see it being a one-off. I see it being a one-time thing. I don't know if it's just a case of Impact gets a bit of buzz before their pay-per-view. I don't know if it's a case of WWE going to Impact, can we use Mickie? And then them saying, okay, you have to say she's the Knockouts champion, give us a plug. And maybe we get a WWE superstar for an Impact taping. That will be interesting to see. Of course, the Impact tapings begin tomorrow in Dallas. So there might be a WWE name that they might show up tonight, a Hard to Kill. That would be exciting as well. Who that would be? Aim for the stars. Get AJ Styles in. Get AJ Styles back in an Impact ring. How exciting would that be? I don't know if that's going to happen. And I'm probably jumping way too far ahead. But it's an interesting situation. And it's certainly a situation I didn't see coming. And like I said, it creates a bit of buzz. It creates a bit of buzz for Hard to Kill tonight. And that isn't a bad thing whatsoever. One thing I did want to talk about as well is Matt Striker. Because Matt Striker, he's no longer with WWE. He's not been with WWE for a while. He's no longer with Impact Wrestling, though, which is a shame. Matt Striker's time with Impact Wrestling has apparently come to an end. Now, on Wednesday, Striker tweeted and then deleted, quote, I am disappointed that my time with Impact on Access TV is done. I really enjoyed that locker room. Thanks for allowing me to tell your story. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe. Now, Mike Johnson, a PW Insider, is reporting that Striker has finished his run with Impact Wrestling. Now, Striker took over his role on the Impact announce team in January of last year, January 2021, working alongside D'Lo Brown for the Impact Hard to Kill pay-per-view, and he's done so for the past 12 months. Now, Brown still remains in his role. It's unknown who will be working alongside him. If you had to predict, it would probably be Josh Matthews, it must be said. So we'll find out tonight. It sucks. It sucks because when I remember doing the video last year when the announcement was made that Josh Matthews had been promoted and he was going to be working in a more senior role behind the scenes. He was going to be sort of producing the announcers. Madison Rayne was retiring at the time. She was leaving Impact because the announce team was Josh Matthews and Madison Rayne. So they were leaving. Or Josh Matthews was promoted and Madison Rayne was leaving. Replacing them was Matt Striker and D'Lo Brown. And they've been a breath of fresh air. Matt Striker did a great job in play-by-play. He's passionate. He knows everyone's backstories. He knows the moves. Of course, D'Lo Brown's experience. He would be a little bit on-off, I would suppose. But I think he's grown into that role nicely. And they've got good chemistry. And they've got a good relationship. And it's been good commentary. You know, some people hate Josh Matthews. I'm not the biggest Josh Matthews fan. I can tolerate him, but I, like many people, just find him to be quite aggravating. So I was glad for the change. Madison Rayne, wasn't the biggest fan of her on commentary, but fast forward a year later, Madison Rayne's wrestling in Impact Wrestling again. Josh Matthews is still working behind the scenes. So I don't think it's a particular leap to say that Josh Matthews will probably replace Matt Striker unless Impact manages to pull off a major coup, which would be bringing in Mauro Ranallo. If it's bringing in Mauro Ranallo, then sorry, Matt, I'll take it. Obviously, I would have preferred it be that it be Matt Striker, D'Lo Brown, Mauro Ranallo. And I don't know if it's Mauro Ranallo. I haven't heard anything. I know, of course, Mauro did the Impact Rebellion pay-per-view, the Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann pay-per-view. For me, Mauro Ranallo is, even so now, when he hasn't been commentating for the past 12 months, 18 months or so, he's still arguably the best play-by-play guy out there. He's that good. I was always a fan of his from SmackDown to NXT. He just makes things feel bigger. When he left NXT, takeovers just felt different. NXT episodes felt different. It would be a massive, massive, massive pickup for Impact Wrestling if they could do that. I don't know if that's the case. We know that basically he came in to work that Rebellion pay-per-view because it was a big event, and on top of that, he's good close friends with Scott D'Amore, both Canadians. I know that, of course, Mauro had some reservations of working in the pandemic. That's ultimately what finished him up with NXT, and he didn't want to do the travel. That's kind of different with Impact because you travel literally once a month. It's not even once a week, it's once a month, and he can still do the Showtime stuff that he does and the plethora of other projects that he had going on. So I don't know. If it's just Matt Striker leaving and maybe it's a budgetary issue, I don't know, but then he's replaced by Josh Matthews, that will suck because for me, Matt Striker was an improvement on Josh Matthews. If Matt Striker's leaving and they haven't decided to renew his deal because they're bringing in Mauro Ranallo, that's slightly different. So I guess we can kind of reserve judgment on this until we see who is actually replacing him. We'll find out tonight. We'll find out tonight. And if it is Josh Matthews, then that sucks, because I felt that Matt Striker deserved better than that, because I really enjoyed his work. I really, really did. Speaking of departures as well, another departure, one being a former X Division champion, that being Rohit Raju, because Rohit Raju has also, in a similar vein to Matt Striker, announced that he is now a free agent. Impact star Rohit Raju, also known as Hakim Zayn, is now a free agent. Raju announced on Twitter, quote, "As of today, I am a free agent. Where would you like to see me next?" Now, his last match of Impact was on the December 18 Throwback Throwdown 2 special, where he lost to Josh Matthews. Before the match, he lost to Josh Alexander on the December 16 edition of Impact Wrestling. Now, he made his Impact debut in 2017. During his career, he was part of the stable, the Desi Hit Squad, and also held the X Division Championship for over 100 days in 2020. So, you know, with Rohit, I always found him sort of entertaining. I wasn't massive on his X Division title run, to be honest with you. He won the title off Chris Bay, and I felt that he cut Chris Bay's reign maybe too short, and maybe Chris Bay should have held it for longer. I always felt he worked hard and he did a decent job. As to where I would see him next, I mean, if he went to someone like AEW, he would be on Dark primarily, you know, and that's not a slight against him. That's just where he would be. Could I see him maybe going in the NWA? Maybe, but they've kind of changed their philosophy as well, to be honest with you. They're going with sort of bigger guys, more traditional bigger guys. So I don't know if he would fit in there maybe. Maybe in MLW, or maybe just work the indie scene. He could certainly just work the indie scene as well, and we could see that happening. I absolutely could see that happening. The indie scene is back up and running. It's not. I don't know if it's thriving as much as it was prior to the pandemic, but we'll see it. He could end up back in Impact Wrestling. I'm sure they'd be happy to have him back. So that's an interesting one about him. But like I said, I wouldn't say I was the biggest Rohit Raju fan. I always felt he did a good job and he was entertaining and he did what he did well. But it'll be interesting to see where he lands next. Now, speaking of hard to kill tonight, one team that isn't going to be there is the Inspiration. The Knockouts Tag Team Champions are not going to be on the pay-per-view tonight. The Knockouts Tag Team Champions, the Inspiration, have been pulled from tonight's Impact Hard to Kill pay-per-view. Jessica McKay and Cassie Lee were scheduled to defend their titles against the Influencers Madison Rayne and Tenille Dashwood at the pay-per-view, but Impact announced yesterday that they are self-isolating after exposure to COVID-19. The Inspiration informed Impact officials they were in close contact with an individual who shortly thereafter tested positive for COVID. And out of an abundance of caution and with the health of others in mind, they have decided to self-isolate over the weekend instead of working hard to kill. Impact Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore noted in a press release, quote, "Impact's COVID protocols are in place to keep our talent roster, staff and fans safe. I am sure the fans will share the inspiration and my disappointment that they won't be in action at tomorrow's stacked Hard to Kill event, but we look forward to their return." So no news on when that match is going to be rescheduled for, probably a main event in an upcoming episode of Impact. They're not going to be working the tapings as well, I'm assuming. So they might actually miss quite a lot of television unless they film it somewhere else and they drop it in. There's obviously ways around it. Unfortunately, as much as it sucks, this is just kind of the life we live in right now. And especially with new variants popping up left, right, and center, that's life, unfortunately, at the moment. And it sucks. It sucks. I was looking forward to their match, and I'm a big fan of the Inspiration, the former Iconics. And obviously, they made their debut at the last pay-per-view, that being Bound for Glory. So it would have been interesting to have a full sort of, I guess, pay-per-view cycle worth behind them in Impact. But it is what it is. As I mentioned, this is kind of the life we're living at the moment. But hopefully they get back on television soon. Finally, I did want to comment on New Japan returning to Access TV, of course, the home of Impact Wrestling, and of course owned by Impact Wrestling's owners, Anthem. New Japan Pro Wrestling programming is returning to Access TV. A video promo announcing a Thursday, March 3rd return date for new episodes aired during Wrestle Kingdom's 16 Night 1 events this past week. The show will air weekly following Impact Wrestling on Access TV beginning on Thursday, January the 20th, with classic episodes. Of course, as I mentioned, new episodes will begin on March 3rd. Now, according to an Anthem press release, Access sister channel The Fight Network will also air the New Japan Pro Wrestling content throughout Canada, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East. While not announced, The show will likely be comprised of matches from major New Japan Pro Wrestling shows from months prior, rather than any new content being produced. The January 20th episode will feature Kenny Omega versus Chris Jericho from Wrestle Kingdom 12. Now, New Japan, of course, does have history on Access TV. It previously aired on Access from 2014 to 2019, with Jim Ross, Mauro Ranallo, and Josh Barnett providing commentary at different points. The partnership ended after Anthem Sports and Entertainment, Impact Wrestling's parent company, purchased a controlling stake in an Access TV. Now, initially, there was no business relationship between New Japan and Impact after Anthem's purchase, stemming from the bad blood between New Japan and Impact following TNA's handling of Okada's excursion years earlier. However, this working relationship built up once again in 2020, and talks about a New Japan possibly returning to Access date back as far as February 2021. So this has been in the works for a while. New Japan reportedly was in search of a bigger television partner in the US. In the interim, their weekly show, of course that's New Japan Strong, aired on the Roku channel. The Roku deal is reportedly not exclusive, so the new access agreement does not necessarily signal the end of that deal. So we could possibly see new episodes of New Japan Strong. I know that airs on the New Japan sort of world platforms, but we could certainly see that on Access TV. We mentioned before, didn't we? We mentioned before what could help Impact Wrestling's ratings. Impact Wrestling's ratings have been struggling, certainly in the second half of last year. It's a new year, new things could happen. I like the idea of a big block of programming on Access TV on Thursday nights, and that's exciting. You've got before the Impact, you've then got Impact on Access TV for 2 hours, and then you've got this New Japan block of programming as well afterwards. That's exciting. That's exciting. And if you're a pro wrestling fan, that gives you the idea of, okay, I'll watch Impact. If you're just a New Japan fan, you might be like, well, I'm going to watch New Japan tonight, but guess what? I'll watch Impact beforehand, and that might help it out. Now, is that going to, double Impact Wrestling's ratings? Probably not. But for this New Japan and Impact Wrestling working relationship, I think it's just going to expand it even further. We've already seen a lot of crossover when it comes to New Japan, whether it's Jay White, El Fantasmo, the Bullet Club, etc., etc. I think given that New Japan is airing literally right after Impact on Thursday nights, surely that opens it up even more. And maybe we'll see even bigger names appearing on Impact Wrestling in the future. So I think it's a win-win for both parties, and good for New Japan for getting their footprint back in the United States. It's certainly very exciting. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about Impact, AEW, WWE, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. As I mentioned, there will be an Impact Wrestling Hard to Kill watch along and post show tonight, so be sure to subscribe and you'll be notified when we go live for both. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.